cannot become yourself until you meet your shadow. Have you ever felt that no matter how much light you chase, something within still feels missing? That beneath every attempt to improve, to grow, to be better, there's a silent ache, a whisper in the dark. There's more of you, but you're afraid to look. Carl Jung didn't believe growth was about becoming pure light. He believed real transformation comes when you face what you've spent a lifetime running from. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This darkness is not evil. It is not broken. It is the part of you that holds your repressed emotions, your abandoned desires, your wounded child. And until you see it, speak to it, welcome it, you are not truly free. The process Jung called individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And to do that, you must pass through the shadows of your own psyche. So the question isn't, how can I become more spiritual? The real question is, what part of me have I rejected in the name of being good? This video is not here to inspire you with false positivity. It's here to invite you back to your wholeness, to the unlit corridors of your soul where your true self still waits, unseen, unloved, but not lost. Because you cannot become yourself until you learn to love your darkness too. The shadow is not a villain hiding in the dark. It is the part of you that you were told not to be. The rage you swallowed. The grief you never allowed. The truths that were too painful to admit, so you buried them deep, hoping they'd disappear. But they didn't. Carl Jung called this repressed part of the psyche the shadow self, the sum of all we reject, deny, or disown about ourselves. And here's the truth that stings. Whatever we refuse to face within, we project onto others. You hate arrogant people. Maybe it's your buried hunger to be seen. You resent people who take up space. Perhaps it's your silenced need to express yourself. The shadow doesn't stay hidden. It leaks through passive aggression, self-sabotage, addictions, jealousy, broken relationships. You think you're making rational choices, but it's the unconscious that's driving the wheel. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is why facing your shadow isn't optional. It's not just emotional hygiene, it's spiritual survival. Because as long as you run from the shadow, you will keep meeting the same people, falling into the same patterns, waking up in the same pain, just with different names and faces. So how do you know your shadow is active? When your reaction is too big for the situation, when you keep repeating behaviors you swore to stop, when you're triggered, drained, anxious, for reasons you can't explain. That is the shadow whispering, look at me, I hold the part of you you're still ashamed of. But here's the paradox, the shadow is not your enemy, it is your inner exile longing to return home. Facing it is not about guilt. It's about reclaiming your wholeness, because every part of you you've rejected still remembers you. Most people think healing means becoming someone better, more kind, more forgiving, more enlightened. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He said, true healing, the kind that liberates the soul, is not about improvement. It's about integration. This is the essence of what Jung called individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole by embracing both your light and your darkness, not choosing one over the other, but letting them meet, speak, and finally reconcile. Because how can you claim to be yourself when parts of you are still locked away in shame? Individuation begins when you stop pretending, when you stop chasing perfection, and instead turn inward to the raw, unpolished truth of who you are. It's a journey few people dare to take because it asks hard questions. What masks have I worn to be accepted? Which parts of me have I exiled to be loved? What inner voice have I silenced just to belong? This path leads you through the forgotten corridors of your psyche, to the shadow self you tried to outrun, to the anima or animus, your inner masculine or feminine energy, to the self, the deep center that holds your soul's blueprint. And here's the paradox: as you face your darkest truths, you begin to feel more alive, more real, more grounded, because finally you are no longer abandoning yourself. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But don't mistake this journey for a straight line. It's a spiral. You'll circle back to the same wounds again and again, but each time with more awareness, more love, more self-respect. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And when you arrive there, not at a destination, but at an inner knowing, you'll understand. You were never broken, you were just divided. Now you are becoming one. What if the most heroic journey isn't towards success or achievement, but inward, into the places you've feared the most? We live in a world obsessed with light. Be positive, stay strong, keep smiling. But beneath those bright mantras, many of us are silently drowning in what we're told not to feel. Carl Jung knew something the world still struggles to accept. You cannot heal by bypassing the dark. Real wholeness isn't about becoming more light. It's about learning to stand with your darkness without flinching. The shadow isn't evil. It's not something to be exorcised or fixed. It's the wounded parts of you that were never given space to speak, the grief that was rushed, the anger you learned to swallow, the shame that curled itself into silence just to be loved. We grow up thinking strength means holding it all together. But what if real strength is the willingness to fall apart, consciously? To look directly at what hurts, to feel what you were taught to avoid, to stop performing and start listening. When you sit with your shadow, you begin to understand why you react the way you do, why you repeat the same painful patterns, why you feel stuck even when life looks fine. And something shifts, not overnight, not in a dramatic moment, but slowly, like thawing. Your breath deepens, your inner war quiets, and you begin to feel real. Jung wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Because until you befriend your own shadow, you'll keep fighting it in others. You'll call people toxic when really they reflect what you haven't accepted. You'll run from relationships, jobs, situations, thinking it's them when it's your unacknowledged self crying out. To embrace your shadow is to return home, not to perfection, but to truth, to the honest, raw, unapologetic version of you that no longer needs to hide. This isn't weakness. This is the sacred act of reclaiming what was lost, of saying to yourself, I will no longer abandon the parts of me that hurt. Because that's where your wholeness begins. If there's one truth this entire journey leads to, it's this. You cannot become who you are meant to be until you stop hiding who you already are. The shadow isn't a flaw in your system. It is the system you never examined. It's the echo of every time you were told, that's not acceptable, be quieter, don't be too much. And so you split into the person you show the world and the person who waits behind your smile. But this split can't go on forever. Eventually, the hidden self knocks through burnout, through heartbreak, through the gnawing sense that something is missing. That's not failure. That's the beginning of awakening. Carl Jung called this sacred process individuation, Not because it makes you better, but because it makes you whole. And that wholeness doesn't look perfect. It looks like depth. It sounds like truth. It feels like home. So what's the lesson? Stop chasing who you think you should be. Start remembering who you already are, beneath the conditioning, beneath the masks, beneath the fear. Because what you're really searching for isn't light without darkness. It's the integration of both. It's standing in your full humanity and saying, I am not just the parts you admire, I am also the parts I've been afraid to face, and I'm learning to love them too. If this video stirred something in you, as if you felt seen or even slightly uncomfortable, good. That's the shadow responding. That's the part of you saying, don't forget me. So take a moment today, close your eyes, ask yourself gently, what part of me have I left behind just to be accepted? Then listen, not to fix, not to judge, but simply to welcome. Because healing doesn't begin with control, it begins with presence, and presence begins when you stop running. You don't have to be fearless to return to yourself, you only have to be willing. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment below. What part of your shadow are you learning to embrace? Share this with someone walking their own journey inward. And don't forget to subscribe. This is just the beginning.